this webinar on load testing JD Edwards. So this webinar is going to go through the basics of Oracle Application Testing Suite load testing, specifically with JD Edwards. There's some really good news. There's only 21 slides in this presentation. A lot of it's going to be practical, using Oracle Application Testing Suite, using OpenScript, and using the Oracle load testing software, and looking at the results and seeing what's going on. We're going to go through initially an introduction to load testing. We're going to talk about what is load testing, why do we do load testing, and then specifically a little bit more information about Oracle Application Testing Suite used as load testing. We've got a particular scenario that we're going to run through with our JD Edwards installation here, and we're going to run through a basic test, a basic process. We're going to execute that. We're going to put that into a load testing scenario and execute that with some parallelism, and then maybe make some improvements and see what we can do. So what is a load test? Or why do you load test? And essentially you load test to get the most out of your system. You've spent a lot of money on software and hardware if you've got JD Edwards up and running. You've got good database systems. You've either got Oracle SQL Server or AS400, and all of this money that you've spent, you want to make sure that you're getting return on that investment. And what load testing is able to do is ensure that your hardware is targeted in the right areas. You've got the right memory, you've got the right CPU, you've got the right disk speeds, and you've got the right parameters in all your parameter files to give your end users the best experience possible and the fastest transacting possible. Of course, it is laboratory based, and we do use virtual users, but we do as much as we can to make it as realistic as we can, given the circumstances. Of course, you're not going to catch every problem in the system once you go live. You're not going to get every issue that could cause a system slowdown, but you are guaranteed to get all of the low-hanging fruit. You're guaranteed to get all of the issues that will affect all of the users. And then we introduced the concept of LTAAS, or load testing as a service. And that's where you can take advantage of load testing without the capital expenditure that's needed to get into load testing. So there's no software buy. You get to lease the software or pay for the software as a service through a company like ours, like Myriad IT Services, who are fully licensed for the Oracle Application Testing Suite. This service can be done remotely, and you get to take advantage of experts that have done a lot of load testing, experts with JD Edwards, experts with tuning systems, and we can log in remotely. We can create the scripts, we can execute the scripts, we can run the scripts, we can give you a series of recommendations and help you implement those implementations, and then we'll run our scripts again to quantify the results. So it's a full turnkey service to enable you to have the confidence that your system's running as quickly as it should be. So when do you load test? Personally, I think you can load test all of the time. I think once you have a benchmark, load testing is very helpful in all situations. Any system changes can be quantified in terms of the changes to performance. But some of the key use case scenarios for load testing is when you're doing an upgrade, you want to make sure that the system's going to survive the first day, and all the users are going to be able to log in and transact at a speed that they're used to, or even better than they're used to. If you do any hardware changes or platform changes, so you upgrade your hardware, or you might move to a different database or a different CPU architecture, virtualization, you're able to quickly and easily quantify this. You're able to test before, test after, and feed up to management the actual results of what improvements you've made. Another popular case for load testing is any tools release or database release upgrade, to make sure that that's going to perform once it's complete. People use this when they're implementing secure sockets or any packet shaping or any F5 devices load balancing to make sure that all the load balancing parameters are going to work when it's used in anger. And of course, just a final use case scenario that I find beneficial is if you're putting your ERP into the cloud, and Myriad IT services do that, we host people's JD Edwards in the cloud, then maybe you want to ensure that the performance for that is working as it should be. And it's a perfect opportunity to use Oracle Application Testing Suite for that, or load testing. So firstly, it's the first product-specific plug, and that's the Oracle product, and it's the Oracle Application Testing Suite. So this is the suite of load testing and performance testing products that we'll be using within this demonstration. We've used the Oracle Application Testing Suite for a number of years to performance test JD Edwards, but we also use it to test other different pieces of software. So we've used it to test Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and we've used it to test some Siebel, and we've used it to test other Microsoft-based products. It's made up of the Oracle Application Testing Suite is made up of 3 separate licensable products. One is the load testing product, one is the functional testing product, and finally there is a test management product which enables you to do hierarchical test management, test execution, and reporting of all your test scenarios. The functional testing module is more about regression testing, so you're able to test many more aspects of what's on the screen. It's not about loading up a lot of users and loading up a lot of transactions. It's about ensuring that the application is working functionally. And of course, the load testing module is what we're going to be doing a deep dive into today. And that's used quite specifically for loading up the system and testing your ERP, or testing whatever software that you're pointing notes at, whatever web-based software that it can handle the load. So who are we? Who's Myriad IT Services? Well, for the purposes of this presentation, we're JD Edwards experts. So we do everything JD Edwards. We've got a lot of CNC, development and functional staff who are experts in JDE. So we install, we test, we upgrade, we develop, we enhance. We've got quite specific tried and tested JD Edwards retirement procedures and policies. We've got clients running in the cloud, and we run their entire retired JD Edwards systems for reporting reasons and for statutory purposes. They need to keep their data available for 7 years after the system's been retired. We've got our own archiving solution, a proprietary archiving solution, which is a very cost-effective way of enabling you to carve off components, slice and dice your production data, whether that's by business unit or by date, and put that into a read-only database, but still allow you to report over that data and your current data with the JD Edwards UBEs and interactive applications. So it's a really nice, neat solution there. We provide printing solutions, so consulting for BIP publishing development, but also we have our own proprietary barcode printing software. We migrate, we do a lot of integration with BSSV, and we've done some BPEL projects, etc. We CURSAT occasionally. We do sell JD Edwards, so if you're interested in buying, come and see us. And we put JD Edwards in the cloud, and we actually host JD Edwards for our clients in our data center. But even more specifically for the purposes of this presentation, we're load testing experts. We've done lots of load testing, we've done lots of system tuning. We can get our DBAs to look at your database, we get our WebLogic people to look at WebLogic, our CNCs will tune your kernels and tune your platforms, and we can ensure that you are getting the most out of your system, and that the hardware and software that you've bought to run JD Edwards is going to run efficiently, it's going to run stably, and all the data that you're entering in is going to hit the database. So let's talk about the scenario that we want to work on today in the webinar. We've got a client, Widgets Are Us, and they're going live with JD Edwards, and they've asked us to load test their system to make sure it's going to handle the anticipated load for when they go live in 2 weeks' time. Their system's quite mature. They've done all their security configuration. They've been fortunate enough to use the regression testing suite or the Oracle functional testing module to do all their regression testing, and they've managed all these test scenarios with the Oracle Application Test Manager. They're actually doing a cloud-based implementation, and they're using the Myriad Data Center to provide the systems for many of their offices around the country and also overseas. And of course, they want to do this load testing to make sure the system's going to handle it, to make sure that their satellite offices are going to receive the performance that they're expecting and that they've been sold on. And they want to ensure that people keep using JD Edwards from day one, and they enjoy the experience of using JD Edwards. There's been so many enhancements in JDE for the user interface with E1 pages and OVR. And you don't want to let your implementation down by having poor performance or instability for your go live. So this is a perfect way and an insurance policy against that. And of course, we're going to use Oats to do our load testing. Unfortunately, Oats can't use the functional testing scripts that they used for the regression testing, that Widgets R Us used for the regression testing, so you re-record your scenarios for performance testing. We must remember that you don't just choose the longest running queries in the system. You don't run a heap of integrity reports and a heap of item location queries to stress the system out to see if it'll handle that, because it's not realistic. What we want to do is build up a load that is somewhat realistic, or what I call laboratory realistic, if that's a term, realistic of the business's day in the life of. So I like to look at the top transactions that a business runs and choose 10 or 20 of those, and I'll call them processes, and I'll record those various processes. A process might be address book entry, another process might be sales order entry, another process might be run GL post, and another one might be generic inquiries. So what we do is we build up a matrix of processes, which we'll call our autopilot load, and we'll put that into the load testing module and run that load. But first of all, we need to identify those processes and record those processes, and then also have an idea of the concurrent volume we want of each of those processes when we do our final load test matrix. And when we run this final load test, we're going to be monitoring everything. So we're going to be monitoring the end user performance, which is usually measured in kilobytes per second, pages per second, and hits per second. But we're also going to be monitoring with the server stats component of Oracle Application Testing Suite. We're going to be monitoring all of our hardware metrics. So we're going to be monitoring CPU, memory saturation, disk utilization, disk speeds. We're going to be monitoring quite specifically our database, because Oats has some really nice plugins to enable you to quickly and easily monitor the important things out of the database when you're running load testing. It can also automatically generate AWRs for you when you do your load test. It's fantastic software. So what we'll do is we'll observe the results of that load test. We'll look at it all graphically. We'll look at our logs. We'll look at our all our event viewers, and we'll make sure that it all works successfully. We'll check the transactions hit the database, and then what we're going to do is look for any improvements that we might make, because that's our benchmark. And then once we've got our benchmark, we can potentially make some improvements and run the test again, quantify the results, and continue to do that. Okay, so that concludes the introduction of this webinar on load testing. Now we're going to get into the practical side of things, and we're going to begin to record a load test. Okay, so now it's time for us to record a session using OpenScript, which is a part of Oracle Application Testing Suite. So we're going to go to my virtual machine that I use for Oracle Application Testing Suite. Here we go. When you install Oracle Application Testing Suite, you get a number of programs here. So you get the administrator to create new users. You get OpenScript to record any functional testing or load testing. You get the Oracle Application Testing. You get the Oracle Load Testing program. You get that's for the execution of load testing. You get the Test Manager. That's generally for the execution of your functional testing or your regression testing, and various other options here. But we're going to go straight into Oracle Application Testing Suite, and then we're going to use the OpenScript to record our first script. So OpenScript is loading here. What we're able to do is choose New from the scripts item. You can choose General. This doesn't have to be Oracle software that you're testing. You can also test any generic web-based software. You can perform different tests, but they're quite separate. So you've got accelerators for functional testing, you've got general testing, and then you've got load testing. So we're going to use the Oracle J.D. Edwards Enterprise 1 load testing, and we're going to call this script 007 finish. So now we've got our new script here. It's loaded up our environment. I don't like the way it looks like this when I do my load testing. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to do half and half here. I'm going to hit record. My browser starts on the right hand side. That's perfect. And then I'm going to go to the Widgets R Us production URL. Here we go. And as we're doing things on the right hand side, you can see all of the CSS loading and all of the J.D. Edwards loading on the left hand side. Now you certainly don't have to wait for the left hand side to finish, but I will show you that I think it's always best to tell load testing what you've done. So this is just logging to JDE, fantastic. Now we're going to go into the fast path and hit address book. And we hit OK. And then we'll just give some proper descriptions. AB into fast path load application. Okay, so we might change this supplier field to be asterisk, and see we'll let the type ahead render there. So change search type C type ahead. Okay, and then we might put in greater than 123, and we'll hit find. And this is find. This is greater than enter QBE greater than 123. Okay. And so we might select our first record. See that I've also left this the open brace numeric value close brace. It's important to know where you're up in the scheme of the script, so I always leave those in there. No, select what that was. Okay, then we might just hit here next. We might hit next. 3, 4, 5. So if hit 5 next. That's just so we know what we're doing. Next. Next. Okay, fantastic. And we might just close out of that. Confirm that close. And then we say just, again, we'll edit this to say close back to work with addresses. Hit OK. And then we might just do some generic queries here. So we might say star non star. And we can see a couple of entries there. Oh, there's my address book entry, that's nice. And then we might put something here greater than 1000. Find. Great, so we've seen a couple of values there. Excellent. So this is description search. And this was a long address book number search. Okay, and what we might do now is just sign out of JD Edwards. I like that confirmation box. You find that if you do load testing yourself, that'll just make sure that all your sessions end properly and neatly. Nothing worse than having orphan sessions on your web server, because when you start repeating this testing or running this testing for a long time, you'll quickly run out of available login places on that web server, and your load testing will quickly fall apart. So what we'll do now is we'll just close out of that browser. That has the same effect of hitting this stop button here. So of course logging out doesn't stop this script recording, but hitting the stop button or closing your browser does. So that's finished. I can tell it's finished because I've got my save bar and I've also got record. So let's just save this script. It's a pretty simple script. We'll navigate to the top. We'll collapse all of these. Oops, I meant to collapse all. And then let's just open up this, and we see that we've only got 19 steps, so we've got 19 pages in this script. That's an important metric to know as well, because the way a page is defined is each one of these is a page. So when we start looking at our pages per second and hits per second, we've got a really good idea of what that actually has generated for our script. So we've got a basic script. What you're able to do now, let's just show you a little bit of navigation on the screen. We can maximize this now. The script is actually code. So when you record this script, the OpenScript converts it into Java code, which is fantastic. It makes it infinitely modifiable. You can change exactly what you need. You can see that these are all a series of HTTP GETs, and then you're able to do any development tasks that you need to do within this IDE on that. But the tree view for now. And so what we might do is we might just play this script and see if it's going to work in terms of unit testing. So I hit play here. We see the script jumping down, going through title. We're logging into JD Edwards. That took a little bit of time. This script is executing with the same delays as what I performed when I recorded the script in the first place. Now we're able to change this through OpenScript in our playback settings, but we'll definitely change it in our load testing. So what we'll do is we'll more than likely, and what I recommend, is a random delay between 2 and 5 seconds. Now what we've found here is that this script has failed. All of the JD Edwards scripts seem to fail for some reason at this exact same location, and it's this Ajax UI state.maf service that always fails. So all I do is I delete that node within the tree, we hit save again, and it's sure to work. There's a couple of standard things you do for your load testing scripts, which I'm going to show you now. The first thing we're going to do is parameterize the URLs. Parameterizing the URLs allows you to replace all instances of this HTTP e1webmids.local:9088. Change every instance of that to a variable name. And so I've just quickly and easily done that. And but it's only just set to the same constant value here, which is e1web2. So what we're going to do is to make this a little bit more dynamic, and quite often you'll record your scripts in one environment and run them in another, and this allows you the flexibility of doing this. I'm actually going to feed in the value of the URL as a data bank, and this is the way you can feed in dynamic data to Oracle Application Testing Suite. So I'm going to use this machine names.csv file, and you can see there that I've got a column machine name and I've got a couple of endpoints. So this will now rotate between those two endpoints. If I put this in Oracle load testing, it'll choose one then the other and scroll through those two endpoints and do some load balancing, as well as test out the two production endpoints that I've got here for widgets R Us. So let me save that script. Another thing I'm going to do now is, you remember when we did a QBE on the address book, we entered in the value 123 or greater than 123 and we hit find. So what I want to do now is I want to change that value of 123. I want something different every time this script runs. So once again, I'm able to deploy the functionality of databanks. I'll again use a CSV type databank. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go around about we know that I entered it around here, but let's just do Control F. 1, 2, 3, we can quite easily just search through the script. We know it's not, that doesn't make sense, and it's a PNG file that's found 1, 2, 3, we don't want that. Find 1, 2, 3. Oh, here's where we entered into the control a value of greater than 1, 2, 3. So what I'm able to do is just highlight that 1, 2, 3 value, not the whole thing because we want it to be greater than. And let's add another new data bank. And let's choose address book numbers. And this is in a CSV file that I created earlier. I just did it in SQL Plus and I selected ABAN8 from proddta.fo101. It was a very simple query to build up this file. But now I've got a completely dynamic script. So my script is going to go through, and for every virtual user, they're going to be entering different data onto this screen. So I'm testing the database out harder and I'm getting closer to reality for my load testing scripts. So close that. So that's great news. I've made this script nice and dynamic. I've got different URLs and I've got different queries being executed against the database all the time. So I think it's always prudent to make sure this script is going to run all the way through. I'll just show you some functionality you've got here. You can see as the script is running through above, you've got these different tabs here. You can actually see the HTML that came in when we executed this test. We can see the headers from the server, we can see the JSession IDs, we can see all this information here, but we can also compare what we recorded and what was run the second time, and this is fantastic also. It really helps us do debugging. We can see you've got different data that you can see with your comparison as well. It also highlights the changes, so you can see the only difference here was the timestamp between the two. Right, so that's a good bit of navigation. I like the comparison view as well, so let's hit play again and let's make sure this script runs all the way through. While that's running through, let's also just check our presentation and make sure that we've ticked off everything that we're supposed to do. So with OpenScript, we did recording of a basic script. So we've got our script to log into JDE, go to the address book, execute a few queries, look at 5 address book entries and log out again. We're testing it locally now to make sure it completes successfully. We were able to parameterize the URLs, so we converted all those URLs to a variable, and then we fed that variable with a CSV or a data bank in Application Testing Suite parlance. And then we did some variable substitution as well. So instead of all of my virtual users looking for address book greater than 123, they all choose a value out of that another data bank, and they hit the database a little bit harder. They, the database can't cache just those one query. It has to cache many queries, and gets us close to reality. Also gets us out of PowerPoint. So let's go back to our application testing suite. That's still running, but you can see it's still running successfully. Because we've named all of our nodes well, we know that it's in JD Edwards. It's selected the address book entry of the top one, and now it's going next, next, next. It's about to close the work with address book screen. We can follow that through, and we get flashes of what's going on here as well. We get flashes of the progress. So let's let that complete. And then we've recorded our first load testing script. And once that's recorded and it's completed successfully through this interface, then we could load it into the Oracle load testing suite, and we can actually run it with some parallelism. So run some concurrent sessions of this exact same script and see if all of our infrastructure can handle it. Okay, so we're about to log out of JDE. Looks to be that this test is going to execute successfully. So this is great news, and this is a very, very simple test. The world is your oyster here. You can do what you wish. You can make these tests as complex as you want. but for the purposes of this presentation we just keep it nice and simple, and hopefully it's going to work. So that's finished now, and we can see that we'll go back to the results tab. Here's all of our results. Everything's worked fine. We get our summary report. We've got 100% success. All of our 19 pages have worked well. The script's saved, so we can exit out of OpenScript. And now we'll look at our presentation. But I think next is running the script. Alright, so this is where things start to get a little bit more exciting with the Oracle Application Testing Suite, because we're actually going to run the script we just recorded, but we're going to run it with some concurrency, and we'll get to see our web servers load up and our database server load up. And this is the exciting part of load testing, because you get to see all these virtual users coming into the system, and you get to make sure that they perform well, and you get to make changes so that they can perform better. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to our load testing software. Now, for this part of the presentation, we're going to use the load testing part of Oracle Application Testing Suite. So we'll just use our menu structure here, and we'll go to Oracle Load Testing. We'll maximize this window. Now, interestingly, it's not clear when you do an installation of Oracle Application Testing Suite what the administrator user is. So the username is administrator, and the password is the one that you specified when you installed the software. Like I said, I've just got a 32-bit XP machine here, and I'm logging into localhost port 8088, and that's actually a WebLogic server that has the load testing application deployed on it. I don't have to be on the console of this machine. I could be anywhere and using a browser and just logging into it, but this is how I decided to do it. Now, you might recall that we recorded script 007 last time. So we can see it in our list of scripts here. This can be as hierarchical as you want, so quite often I'll have client name, and then I'll have script scenario, etc. So I'll have a nice hierarchical structure here, but it's really flat for this demonstration. When you double click that script, it brings it into the scenario planner, and then what you're able to do is to select how many VUs, or how many virtual users you want to run this particular script. You see where they're going to run from. So I might get these 10 to run from Abu Dhabi. Between iterations, I only want to wait 1 second, and this is a really important setting here. What virtual user pacing do we want to use? Recorded, and we probably don't want recorded because I took so long. If you're doing this in anger, you'd probably choose random, but because I want things to run quickly and to be able to demonstrate as much as possible, I'm going to choose no delay. Now, no delay is not realistic for a load testing scenario. It's not bad for a shakedown test if you want to make sure that your servers are going to handle some sort of load, but only in a shakedown scenario. If you want to execute a proper load test where you're going to report on it, you probably want an average delay of between 2 and 5 seconds. And then what you're able to do is then run maybe a different script, 10 of them from the Perth office, and we want no delay on those. And then we might run another different script, and we might run 50 of those guys, and we want to run them from our Sydney or our Brisbane office, and again we want no delay on those. So that's how simple it is to build up a fairly complex scenario that you'll add to your autopilot for load testing. We're not going to make it as complex as that for this demonstration. So what we'll do once again is we'll choose our 007 script, add that to here, we'll say we want no delay, and I'm actually going to change the data bank values because I only want to use one endpoint. So I'm just going to say only use the specific record 1 through 1, so I only want to use 9088 for the widgets are us load testing scenario. So let's add this to our autopilot, and that presents us with the setup autopilot script. Now out of the box, that's only going to stop when the stop button is pressed, but I don't want that to occur. I actually want to run three lots of 10s. This is going to run 3 groups of 10 user tests. You can also stop after a delay of an hour, or you can stop at a specific time, so it's great for stress testing and load testing. Server stats configurations. I've got some pre-built server stats configurations. I cannot reiterate the importance of getting good server stats recorded when you're recording the script, so that you can view the kilobytes per second, the pages per second, the hits per second. You can see any slowdowns that your users are receiving, and you can map that exactly to what's going on in your hardware. Don't rely on cut and pastes from perfmon or cut and pastes from IOstat or VMstat. Don't do that. Get all of your statistics working through the Oracle Application Testing Suite and through the load tester, and it'll be much easier to solve any bottlenecks. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to hit play on this and see what's going to happen. It saves off all your data as a certain name, so we'll just say this is session 28. That'll do for now. You probably want to give it a decent name, but session 28 will do for this. And what you'll see is, as your users start logging into the system, this grid will start to be populated with their sessions. What I'm going to do while that's happening is I'm going to go to Server Manager and also show you that these users are real sessions hitting our real ERP. And we can look at Server Manager, and we can go to our JD91 instance. We go to User Sessions, and we can see here that our users are starting to log in. Actually, they're not yet. Tests here are still ramping up. There we go. So these have started. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay for the scripts to begin because all the server stats have to connect to the various servers. So we have to connect to the database to get the database statistics, then connect to the database operating system for all the operating disk statistics, also to the web server. And sometimes those can take a little while. But what you can see here is this script is absolutely flying through. It's taking on average about 5 seconds to complete. We can see there that we've finished 3 iterations of all the top ones, and we just, because of the ramp up speed probably wasn't high enough for this low number of users, because we're ramping up 10% of users every 5 seconds. We're only getting 1 user logging in every 5 seconds. So really all of our delays are waiting for the users to log in and waiting the second between the scripts more than the script executions themselves. So you can see that they've all run very fast. We can probably see some sessions here, but they've all disappeared already because it's all gone so quickly. And that script's finished. We can tell it's finished because the play button has appeared here. And so all well and good to look at that in a grid format, but what we're actually able to do now is look at it in our graphical mode. And what we can see quite quickly is that we can see a very good consistent performance, and we can say performance versus time. We just want to look at that one view. We've got excellent performance, on average of 4.6 seconds to run the tests, and a minimum of 4.2 and a maximum of 5. And this is the sort of consistency that you want to see with a load test. Never accept graphs that are choppy. Too much variance in the performance means there is some bottleneck that you need to fix. The graph should be really nice and smooth, and there should be no upward trends. We can also look at our statistics versus time, and this is for 10 users. For 10 users we got up to about 70 kilobytes per second, and we got hits per second of around 40, and then we've got pages per second of around 10. And if you think of the pages per second, about 10, we had 10 concurrent users, so we're receiving 1 page per second, which is second to sub-second performance, which is pretty good, but it was a very basic test. We're also able to get more detailed views of our tests. If we choose just plain old session 28, which is the one we want, we talked about our server monitors before, so we can actually look at what the the servers were doing. So we can see user CPU statistics on the database machine. Don't be frightened by that, that's not 100%, it's actually a maximum of 8%. So we've got a maximum of 8% CPU utilization. From the database, we also got some host CPU utilization statistics. Remember, this is user, and then we get system, which is more. But when we looked at the database said it was running at about 6%, and then it peaked up at about 15%. So that's really doing nothing. We could also look at the database physical IOs per second, and that's doing not many physical IOs per second either. So we've got a very basic script here. But we can look at these metrics, but then we can also look at quite specific script items here. So we could look at our description search, because that might have done some sort of table scan, and we can see here that the description search actually took a little bit longer so we can look here at our description search here. Took a bit longer when the CPU peaked. So we might say that, oh, well, the CPU was peaking, only peaking at 9% when we were hitting the database with those scripts, and that's exactly what we'd want to see. So you can see how we can quickly interpret this information because it's in the one single format, and we can put all these counters side by side and analyze these counters with a lot of detail and a lot of context with our server statistics and our metrics. You can also get a really good view of things to generate a report. So if you want to put a report and export it as CSV or HTML, and you get all the information about all your specific pages. And this is exactly why we put accurate descriptions on our pages, because we can see that what is actually happening. We can see what is occurring. So we've got that initial select, which should take a little bit of time. Hitting next on those pages should take no time at all, and that doesn't. Closing the screen and rendering a new screen, we can see this is web-based time. Doing a description search, we know that's really pure database, and that's nice and quick. So our good descriptions here have really enabled us to drill into this data and drill into the details of the statistics and the performance, knowing that it's performing well. And you can see that for that particular test, we only put about 3.5 meg of data through our web server, and you can see all of our statistics there. It also gives you a complete report of what all your settings were when you ran the test, so that's excellent. Alright, so let's make sure we covered off all of our topics. So we logged into the Oracle load testing application, we did some basic navigation, we looked at the options for accelerated playback, and I mentioned that it's probably best to have a delay of between 2 and 5 seconds. We looked at some other options that you might want to change, which is where the scripts run from, also the databank changes that you can make. Then there's many other changes that you might want to make. I've had to make timeout changes before. I didn't for this particular scenario. We looked at when the script's going to stop, so how many iterations of the script or how long you want it to run for. We looked at all our server stat monitoring and also the execution of the test. So now what are we going to do? We're going to do look at some learning and see what we can learn from the results. Okay, so we've been able to record our first Oracle Application Testing Suite script using JD Edwards. We've been able to run that script through Oracle through the load testing module, and we've got our benchmark so that we know that the script is performing on average at about 4.5 seconds. Now what we're going to do is try and, with this benchmark, try and see if there's anything we can do to make some improvements. And what's important, we did look at many of the graphs and forms on the previous section. We saw that what's important from an end user perspective, that the metrics that are important for the end user is hits per second and pages per second and the kilobytes per second. So that's really measuring what the end user is seeing from the ERP. And that is the culmination of the response from the database server, the response from the JD Edwards application server. Everything comes in and is added up and is finally interpreted by the end user as some sort of wait time and as some sort of delay. So that's why the hits per second and pages per second are the most important figures, and that's why understanding your scripts is vital, and hence us giving decent descriptions for many of the nodes in the recording tree, so we can actually take that back to real world scenarios and know what particular operations a user was doing was taking the time. Of course, with load testing, you're always looking for the next bottleneck. You're looking at why the script was slow or how could it be faster. And so what you want to do then is look at all of the other metrics around the system. You want to look at your disk utilizations on the database server, your CPU saturation at all tiers, your memory consumption, your swaps file usage. You need to look at all these metrics to see if there's any hardware limitations that's causing you any issues. But then you need to look at all your configuration and all of your log files and all of your initialization files, and then you look at your database connections to make sure that your performance is not being impeded by a setting in a file somewhere, which quite often happens. What's bad with load testing? I guess this is some general observations from me. Don't allow things to trend up. There's nothing worse than seeing your hits per second or pages per second slowly but surely get higher and higher, get lower and lower. You want your pages per second and trend and hits per second to improve, and you want your response times to trend down. But don't allow your graphs, don't allow your scripts to get longer as they go along, because that generally means there's a memory leak or a connection pooling problem or some issue that you need to resolve. Don't let your scripts, and don't sign off a load test where they're too bumpy or too lumpy. You don't want too much ups and downs. You want a really consistent performance result. You want all of your tests to fit within a 20% execution time of each other. You don't want them to you don't want a script to run 10 seconds 1 minute and 20 seconds the next. You're hitting some system limitations if that's occurring. And of course, in our virtualized environments that we have these days, it's very easy for us to mitigate the instances of high CPU. High CPU, I believe, is a really good thing. I believe if you're getting high CPU in modern machines, it means the data's getting to the machine quick enough, so it means your disk speeds are good and it means your network speeds are good. So I'm never that concerned about high CPU. I do, however, get concerned about low CPU. I believe that low CPU quite often means that potentially your database is not getting the disk throughput it needs, and if the database is not getting the throughput it needs, it means your UBEs won't be consuming the CPU that they could be, it means your web servers won't be, and it means your applications won't be. So watch out for low CPU usage, and that will generally mean you want more memory or faster disk. And I guess load testing is all about the pursuit of bottlenecks, and my graphic there of a large bottleneck and going down to a small bottleneck, that's generally how they'll go. Generally you'll find the first bottleneck, you'll fix it, and then you'll get to the second one. But the second one won't give you as much back as the first one. And then you find the third and the fourth and the fifth. But the return on investment, so the amount of time it takes to find and to fix the bottleneck, might outweigh the performance improvements you get in the bottleneck itself. And remember, our systems change all the time, so with data growth and with changes to systems and changes with the user usage patterns, bottlenecks can also change. So in a year, what mightn't have been a problem for your load testing could well be a problem now. So it's a constant battle to find bottlenecks, to eliminate bottlenecks and move on, but you must maintain a stable system, and you must maintain an integral system, so a system that maintains data integrity. So now it comes to improvement. So what you're able to do is view all of your metrics and view all of the results from your script runs. You're able to make some changes to your system, And then you compare the results of your next test against your benchmark. It's vital to save off your scenario. So if you come up with a complex scenario of 10 purchase order users, 15 sales order entry users, 20 GL post in, etc., then what you're able to do is rerun that exact same scenario. It's so important with load testing to rerun the exact same thing. Take out the variables of this testing, rerun the same scenario, and then quantify the results. Whether they're positive or negative, you might be surprised. They might be negative. Generally they're positive. But you've got to say, right, with those changes, I've got a 15% improvement in kilobytes per second, hits per second, although my database server is using 20% more CPU. You've got to be realistic and quantify all of the metrics along the way so you know exactly what happened. So what we're going to do now is go through the improve section, run another load test, and see what we can get out of the system. Okay, so we've made some system changes, and we're going to execute these tests again and see what sort of results we can get out of our system. So we're going to go to our load testing machine here. What we're going to actually do, the system changes have been minimalistic because the script's so simple, but you can appreciate what you'd do normally. Normally you'd make some changes. You might increase some memory here, you might increase your database SGA. You would check all of your log files. It's vital to check your WebLogic log files. It's vital to check your JAS, your JD Edwards log files, your application server log files. You might want to change kernel counts. You might want to change how many threads your queues have on your enterprise server. You might want to increase your call object kernel counts. You might want to increase your BI publisher kernel counts or your XML kernel counts so that your jobs can produce their pixel perfect output quicker. There's so many changes that are possible in load testing, but the advantages are, of course, that you will be able to quantify those results, and you want to ensure that the system maintains its stability and the system also maintains its integrity with any of these changes that you're going to make. So what I'm going to do in this scenario is I'm just going to add this to the autopilot. I've got 10 systems. I'm going to run that 10 times, so 10 by 10. So we're going to actually run 100 users through the system, and hopefully what we're going to see is very similar, nice consistent performance results. We're going to use the same monitoring for demo servers too. And so we're going to run 100 sessions through the system. So let's hit play here. Session 29, we'll remember that. And as this begins and ramps up, we'll be able to see those users logging into JDE here. So we're starting to load up. All of our server stats are starting to record. Here we go, we've got our users logging in. We can go into Server Manager, and we can see all our users logging in. And we're going to probably consistently have about 10 users on the system because they're, there's not a lot of delay between these. What we can do while that's running is we can look at the call object stats. We can see the average runtime for these call objects, and we know that everything's running extremely quickly. The only thing that's taking about 1 second is the login. We can see our database caches and make sure that our cache hits and our cache misses are a lot better, and you can see the ratio from hit to miss is excellent, and we are running pretty similar queries across the board, so you'd expect that. Our database connections, we're not saturating any of our database connections. This is an area where people often go wrong and often get some pretty poor performance, so be careful with your database connections. You can see some JDBJ runtime information here, and what's configured for your particular driver and any changes that you might want to make there. I wouldn't recommend much. We can see our kernel statistics, so our JDNet statistics, how many messages are going in and out, and then our runtime information about our Java, our JDK and our JRE. So lots of great information there in SOAR. Any users? We've still got a couple of users in. You can see very little idle time because we've got them all set on no delay. So they're all tracking through really quickly. We're going to find that we're probably nearly finished our load tests and nearly everyone's done. Those tests are complete, that's great. And now once again we can view our runtime graphs and we get some really nice consistent results. We can see that it took 7 seconds at the peak, and we saw a peak of when we're getting for 10 users really busy on the system. We're getting a maximum of 160 kilobits per second, which is really quite busy. And then you could use some of these numbers. If I show you that screen, statistics versus time. So for 10 users to use 160 kilobits per second, you can see what an average user would use, which is about 16 kilobits per second, which is a pretty well-known figure from JD Edwards. But that's with no delay, so that's hitting the system pretty hard and being pretty chatty. And then we were getting a peak of 113 hits per second, which is pretty amazing for 10 users. So they're getting 10 hits per second, and we're getting up to 26 pages per second. So we're really getting some great throughput at that point in time. That's in excess. That's one page every half a second. So we're getting some amazing throughput there. So our system changes seem to have been very promising. They've got us. They've improved our performance twofold. We can grab these reports and generate these reports and save them off for prosperity later, so we know exactly how long things were recurring. We can see we put 11.6 meg through to the web servers. We generated 1900 pages, we had 0 errors, we completed 100 transactions, and there's 8100 hits, and then we get all the statistics out of the system as well. So overall it's been a very successful test, and Oates has been able to show us exactly what's been going on. We can also see, as we said last time, if we go to session 29, we could see some of the big hitters of our server statistics and make sure that that's all going well. So we look at our CPU utilization. Well, let's clear the graph first. Our CPU utilization, which gets to a maximum of about 42, which is relatively high for our database server. And we probably overlay some of our session counters with kilobytes per second at the same time and pages per second. And then we could also look at our web server's CPU utilization for user and system. And then I like to press this button here, and then we can see, so the CPU only peaked at about 23% for our web server. The user peak was about 60%, so it went up there pretty high. So really with that 0 delay, we're hitting our servers well, but nothing that we should worry about, no upward trends, and our graphs are nice and smooth. Anyway, let's have a quick look at our presentation to make sure we've covered everything off. We've done our comparison, we've compared with our benchmark, everything's looking much better. Our hits per second and kilobytes per second and pages per second are much better on our second test run, so we're getting faster. Our CPU was up there, but we're in a virtual environment and we could move that around if we wanted to. And we're getting exactly what we want out of our load testing. It really is going well, and we believe that our users are going to be impressed with the system on day one. Quickly, I want to go through my top tips for load testing. Don't choose the longest running jobs for your scenarios. Don't choose integrity reports and the item location queries that really kill the system. Choose realistic queries that you're going to run every day. Choose the top 10 or the top 20 business scenarios that your business runs, something like sales order entry, address book entry, GL inquiry, those types of transactions, key transactions, and then load them up. Choose scenarios that test different aspects of your software. So choose some scenarios that are front-end intensive, that do large selects, large finds, go to the end of fairly big grids. You want to stress out the front end in some scripts. Do some other scripts that do a lot of back-end processing, a lot of big business functions. Have some scripts run some UBEs. Have the GL post run, the pixlet print, the the purchase order print have UBEs running as well, and then you'll be able to look at your scripts and determine where your bottlenecks might be. So you'll quickly you'll be able to hone in on your performance problems quicker. Get users to manually test alongside the load test and give them that confidence that when there's 500 users on your system, that they're still able to navigate around the system quickly and get their job done, and that message will spread well through the user community. Get your monitoring right, make sure everything's working through server stats, and then you'll be able to compare all of your end user performance with your machine performance. Have your scripts be autonomous. Have them be able to create their own data, set up their own data, use their data and remove their own data. And when they're infinitely repeatable like that, you can move them across environments and you can move them across sites, and that's exactly what we do at Myriad. Get to know regular expressions when you're doing advanced functionality within the application testing suite. It's really good to know your regular expressions. When you're executing load tests, don't just say that was a successful test. Make sure you check how many purchase orders went into the database and how many sales orders. You can get Oates to run the queries to check the differences in the counts in these tables, but make sure that the tests have integrity. Make sure your log files aren't spitting out terrible things. So after every test, check your log files and check your database to make sure the data's hitting the database and that any errors are getting raised, and fix those errors. When you're doing your recording, make sure you record as close to the final scenario as possible. So if you're going to get some sort of box about a stock level warning, or you're going to get a warning box about duplicate purchase order number, make sure you're recording the scenario where you're going to hit OK to that box. Because if all your load testing users start to get pop-up screens that they don't expect, it's going to invalidate all of your tests. So you've got to be very careful that your tests are completing properly. And I like to use page name tests throughout my scripts. Start with the smallest test and build up to your final numbers. So if you're looking at 500, do a 100 test, do a 200 test, do a 350, and then some 500s to make sure that they work along the way. And then finally, load test in the most mature environment possible. So do your load testing where your security's mature, where you're using your production kit, where your load balance is in place, where you're doing any web compression. If you're using secure sockets or HTTPS, make sure everything's in place so that you have the smallest number of caveats on your load testing report and the largest number of similarities to what your end users are going to use. Anyway, that's all. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for listening. If you have any questions about load testing as a service or our Myriad IT Services load testing suite, please get in contact. There's my email address there, and enjoy.